thank you all for being here. We appreciate, the time that you took. The name of this topic is Dissecting a Writing Prompt and Rubric and Creating a Timeline. And firmly believe that some of the information that I have here will definitely help you become a better writer and just organize yourself better. Um, let's go ahead and get started. A quick table of contents. I'm going to be talking about a timeline, which is going to be super important so that you could be organized and so that you can have enough time to, research the assignment, start your rough draft, and be able to submit it. We're going to talk about some of the types of prompts: descriptive, argumentative, argumentative is usually the one that requires a little bit more time, persuasive, narrative, and some examples and how to go about, taking them head on, and then we'll do some examples at the end, and maybe somebody, we can all incorporate a little bit of our own input, and then maybe you do like a rough draft essay. And let's get started. So one of the first things you would definitely need to do, you got to understand, writing takes time. It's very hard to try to do a paper on the first day. Like, let's say it's due that same day, and you're just going to get started. It's almost impossible to try to do a paper in one day because it takes time. And usually this is a hypothetical scenario. Let's say that your professor gave you 2 weeks for an assignment. He gave it to you on Monday and it's due in 2 weeks. I personally like to organize my time. And week one, I came up with a little thing here. Like, let's say the first few days, they give it to you on Monday. So that first phase is, I call it the trenches, because you're don't know where to start. You don't know where to go. So the first thing you want to do, week one, can you guys see my mouse? I don't know. Are you able to follow along?
Yes, we can see.
Okay. The first thing you want to do is, understand the type of prompt that they gave you. Do you have to argue for something? Do you have to analyze a poem, a book, a character? Do you have to describe something? Or are you trying to persuade a reader to do something? That's what you would have to do in the first few days. Read your material, read your sources, try to understand what it is that you're being asked for, do an outline, take notes. Very important, as you're doing research, keep track of your URLs, save your websites and links, because you don't want to have to go back later on and try to figure out, oh, where did I get this from and where did I get that from? You don't want to confuse yourself. So one thing that you should do within those first few days is definitely keep track of your sources. Even if you have to open up a Word file and just put the links in there, you can always go back and cite them properly. And around this time, you kind of want to begin formulating your thesis. What it is that you want to say in your paper. Like around this, let's say a few days after that, like around Wednesday of week one, now we begin doing a free write. You want to begin writing your rough draft. Once you went through this phase, I call this phase the battlefield, because now we're going to start with, now we're going to start actually putting words on paper. And the first thing you should probably focus on is your body paragraph, which I call the core, because really that's what counts in any essay, is the core of the paragraph, the body paragraphs. That's what really is going to hold all the weight. Introduction and summary, you could do that at the end, because that kind of writes itself out once you have the core. You'll begin, once you do a free write, let all your thoughts out. Don't worry about grammar, don't worry about spelling or anything, it's syntax, don't worry about it. Just let it all out, freestyle it, improvise. And around this time, once you have like a rough draft, you want to, at that moment, try to see your writing tutor right away. Within a night. This area here usually takes the longest, because you're kind of already trying to navigate through, and you're kind of refining where you're going to end up at. Once the tutor sees you and you go through the first rough draft, you'll be working on your second draft. By the time you get that second week, by the time you're at the Monday of the next week, you kind of should have already have an idea what your essay is gonna, what it's gonna be about. You should already have like a first draft already revised. And really what you want to do on these last that last week is make any adjustments. Anything that the tutor told you to do, like change this, add this citation, you want to start doing that there. And very important, read out your essay, read it out loud, because sometimes reading it in your mind can sound different than actually verbalizing that. So that's another way that you could do that out on your own, and it kind of helps you see, okay, this sounds a little awkward. This could sound more clear, or I notice here that I'm tripping on my words, and maybe I can use less words. And you should probably want to meet one more time with another tutor by week 3. Sorry, by week 2, and really you're just trying to refine and polish your essay, and then have it submit. Let's say it's due on Sunday. Sorry, that following Monday. Try to submit it by Saturday or Sunday. You don't want to. What you don't want is that last day, because I know how it is. I've been there. That last day, you feel that pressure. You still haven't done. Don't put that pressure on yourself. You know. So just give it time. And you can't writing. One thing I personally I love writing, and it could be. That's why I called it a battle. That last space is the conqueror. At this point, you did all the work. You saw the tutors. You did all the research. You should be conquering that essay right around now, and then submitting it to Turnitin.com. But hopefully, some of this helps you. Just try to keep, like, I'm very visual, and so if you're whoever's visual, you can kind of like organize yourself. If you use a timeline like this. But let's do an example. Let's see. Okay. And I chose probably the most easiest type of prompt is a descriptive one. It just requires you to describe an image or an experience. I have an example. And usually when you're describing, you want to appeal to the 5 senses: touch, auditory, olfactory, which is smell, taste, visual. And I have one here. Maybe we can play around with this one a little. Describe what a day without anger would feel like and look like for you. That could be, let's say that you were given that one. If you don't mind, let me share my other screen. Let me share a Word file. Can you still see this?
Yes, sir.
So describe how a day without anger look like. Let's say that was our prompt, right? We got nothing. All we have, when you see a blank page, I know a lot of students get mad when they see or upset when they see a blank page, but you should see it as a world of new opportunities. I don't see a blank page. I see the world, and where are we going to go? Maybe a day without anger would feel, we're just free writing, would feel less light. I don't know who wants to be a brave soul and try to describe what a day without anger would look like and feel like for you. Maybe
I wake up. Normally, I wake up in a bad mood, but the news from my wake up call was not bad this day. It was a happy news, actually. They discovered a cure for cancer. On my way to my work, the elevator was not slow, came right away. I didn't have to wait like 4 minutes, and the best was empty. Nobody was in elevator. That means I will get at the down floor even faster. I start my day perfectly on that day. Okay, finish.
all right. Okay, yeah, so far so good. All right, okay. So yeah, everybody's gonna experience it differently. Maybe a day without anger would feel like you're floating, right? No worries, no regrets, and it would probably feel like I'm in a dream. So, sometimes you start like this when you're writing. You're just putting your thoughts down, and we're not really too concerned with formatting or anything. Anybody else? Farrell? Let's see, Farrell, you there? You hear me?
Yes, sir. For me, it would be like peaceful, like hearing the sounds of nature, like taking a walk. I don't know, doing homework, going to work, and having nice customers, getting the job done, enjoying my family. So I would describe like the sense, the experience, like like the sense, like the five senses, and then how I feel about people, like
Mhm.
physical description, and then like experience descriptions.
Yeah. You could, there's so many ways with this particular one, there's so many avenues you could take it. Maybe you could even say, let's say, if you wanted to appeal to somebody's auditory, that would feel like, like a heavenly choir playing beautiful music.
Or maybe or even the opposite of anger, like laugh sounds,
Yeah.
joy, like music.
Um, that, maybe that day will taste like, um, with something sweet. What's that? Tres leches. Right?
Yeah,
Creative with it. That day will taste to me like it's tres leches, or it'll be, let's use, let's see, it'll feel to my senses like it's a velvety. And you could be creative with these. That's a good thing about the descriptive ones. It could be creative. Maybe another one talks about how does love make you feel. You know, I'm sure everybody would be able, and use appeal to the five senses. That would be very easy to write. So if you were given like a prompt like this, like descriptive, this is one way to approach it. Just descriptive words. Um, for sure, use a lot of adjective. Describe your actions.
okay, sir.
This is one example. This is one type of prompt. But let me show you now another type of prompt, which is probably one of the most common that I've seen. I know I've seen it. It's the argumentative prompt. And argumentative prompt. It requires you to investigate a topic, take a position on that topic, read data, collect data, go through databases, read magazines, read articles, listen to interviews, professional interviews. It depends on what you're going to argue. And then you have to defend it. You took your position, now we're going to defend it. And usually logos, you try to appeal to logic. You try to set it up in a logical way. And another thing, sometimes in argumentative essays is you got to consider the opposition. What are your critics going to say? How are they going to criticize your position? And one of the most famous ones that I like for me that I was fascinated by is evolution. For example, evolution is versus creation is who has it right. You were given this assignment. You got to choose a position and you got to argue for it using data, statistics, facts. Um, and let's see how we can go about it. Creation versus evolution. Here's what this would be my position. Um, Let me search my word. Hold on. Slow down here. Creation of this. So they gave us the assignment. Um, we're just starting. We have a blank page. Let's start putting words on the screen. Who is right? Me personally, I would say I would argue in favor of a creationist. Why? I can't just say, "Oh, I believe it's correct." Okay, well, why? Maybe I would say there's scientific evidence that proves it. You know, um, and obviously, a lot of people are going to disagree. An atheist would definitely disagree with what I'm saying. And it could be, this one I like it because it could be very divisive. A good argumentative essay divides people on everything, like abortion, religion, politics, all that's, those are good argumentative types essay. But this one is specifically, I like it because of the repercussions. that, you can change somebody's life. Scientific evidence, maybe you could say historical evidence. Maybe some people want to argue with historical religious texts. But I might be kind of cautious about this one because maybe somebody might counter against that. But you know what I would do here? I would probably start using a database, and I could show you. If you guys are familiar with the MDC database, this would be a good place to start. I could show you. Let me go to second. Here. Can y'all still see my screens?
Yes.
Yeah, a second. I got everything on here. How am I going to find evidence to prove that, creation is the right one? I'll probably go to libraries, databases, because, I don't just want to use my feelings, right? I'm trying to argue and I can't argue with my feelings. I got to use with facts, research, statistics. Maybe I would go to this database here and load. Using this one, just make sure we select everything. And then maybe here I would look up for scientific evidence.
Sam, I'm still seeing the PowerPoint. I don't see the screen with your database.
Oh, my mistake.
You may have to stop sharing and reshare.
Yeah. My mistake. Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah.
No problem.
Are we good?
Perfect.
Let me go back to this again. MDC.edu. I'm sure most of you are familiar with this one. So right now I'm trying to look for scientific evidence to prove or to try to establish that creationism is the right way to go. But academics, libraries, databases, and obviously there's other sources that you could use, but this one, some professors require you to use this one. And complete academic search, complete EBSCO, that's one of the best ones. And also how you look up information can yield, different results. Let's see. Let's say I want to find scientific evidence. So you would just have to try to find something that kind of supports your side, It's going to require you to read articles, maybe read a book, maybe see a debate. Maybe you can watch a debate and see how the creation is argued, how the evolution is argued. Let's see, the creation. This one sounds like it's a good one. The creation hypothesis, scientific evidence for an intelligent designer. Let's say that I like that one, right? It's a book actually, which we can do that. Let's just see. That one looks curious. Remember, we're still in the argumentative essay. I'm trying to argue my position that creation is the proper view. Some of these, and maybe not this one because doesn't let me do anything. Maybe we could use, let's say, for some reason I can't find anything on the MDC website, right? I could also try Scholar Google. Maybe I could type that, evidence for creation. And it's just about finding something that you like. The kids, let's see, which one looks good to me? You might have to be doing this a lot too. It's going to require you to invest time into it. Sometimes you are going to have to break your head a little bit and trying to find articles or sources that side with your view. Argument, the arguments for this would be a good one. The arguments for creationism and the arguments for evolution. That way you can, hey, what are they saying? What are the creationists? What are the evolutionists saying? Now, one important thing when you're looking at like some of these sources, the abstract gives you a lot, like an overview of the entire paper, because some of these are kind of technical to read out, and usually they do give you access to some of them. But let's say that I found the source, right? And this source is going to establish the use of DNA, which this is a common one that I've heard. Let's say that I found a source, right? And one piece of evidence is DNA. Now, how could that be? Let's say I want to argue that, well, DNA, it is known that DNA is information, genetic information. And maybe you could found another source that says, information. This is just like following the logic. Another source I found out, it says that information only comes from intelligent sources. And we would assume that whoever created DNA must be an intelligent source. Let's say I follow it up with, let's say my pretend in-text citation, Smith, 2023. That's one way of, it's just like it's like a free write, rough draft. Maybe another one would be another piece of evidence that I found was the fact that there is abstract thinking. The fact that we can think about love and honor and we know about anger and jealousy, all those feelings. Are they real or are they not? Are they? It sounds a little silly, but are they real? Are they physical? What are they? Are they just chemicals? Are they just frequencies in our mind? What are they? Does the love that we have for our parents or the love that we feel for our children or our siblings, is it real? How do we know it's real if we can't see it or touch it? It has to. That would be another aspect of going about it. So really, it all depends on what it is that you're trying to argue for, and as long as you can have facts, research, expert opinions, this is just going to make your essay stronger, and no feelings. Not on this one. Just keep that in mind when you're arguing. If you're ever presented with an argumentative type essay, this right here is going to be a solid. If you have this backing you up, you're going to bulldoze, the opposition. Yeah, hopefully, I don't know if anybody has any questions or concerns about this one. I can move on to another type of prompt. But definitely, for sure, you got to do a lot of reading and investigating, collecting data, save your URLs. Yeah, save URLs so that you can just put them in a Word file. Save it, and then you can always go back and cite it. Okay, let's keep going. Another type of essay is you might be asked to write an essay where you're trying to persuade somebody. So let's say for this one right here, I want to persuade everybody here today why you should do intermittent fasting at least twice a week. Here, I'm going to try to convince you that, hey, side with my view, do what I'm telling you or take this action. Whether I'm appealing to your emotions or whether, this ethos, this leading doctor believes that if you fast twice a week, it'll improve your overall health, it'll improve your mental health. And, let's do a little research on that. Maybe, I don't know where to start. We have another one here. Intermittent fasting. I'm going to try to convince people why they should. But, I don't really know where I'm starting. I don't know what I'm going to do. I just need to know that I need to write this essay and I need to convince you to do it. We could start again, Scholar, Google, or whichever. And And then maybe here, how you look up information is going to determine what type of results it yields. So maybe this one I would do benefits of intermittent fasting. Metabolic, intermittent is the weight worth, let's see what looks good. Effects on the return on glucose and lipid metabolism. Health benefits of Islamic fasting. Oh, let's check that one out. Let's see, what can I use from here to try to convince you? Freezing. But right off the top of my head, just while that loads up, let's freestyle. For sure, from what I recall. The first one the first benefit is you will lose weight. And then by that's going to cause you, by you losing weight, you may have increased confidence, if you increase your confidence, you might have a better social relationships. Maybe another one, and I'm paraphrasing, instead of your body breaking down food, it can regenerate tissue, it can regenerate other parts of your area. And, areas, and I'm sure there's plenty more. How would it benefit me mentally? I know there's a thing called mental fog. Maybe you'll have less mental fog. Let me go back to my, they didn't give me anything. Okay, sometimes that happens. Sometimes you don't. Benefits, let's see what else I can find. Impact of intermittent fasting on health and disease processes. Oh no, maybe another one. Let's say that somebody who's diabetic, may reduce their glucose levels, hemoglobin A1C, which is like it measures like your glucose levels within the past 3 months. This is another benefit. And if let's say what else. Oh, look at this one. Health effects of intermittent fasting. Hormesis or harm. A systematic review. Systematic review. Let's see. Remember, I'm trying to convince you to do intermittent fasting twice a week. Intermittent fasting is, for those of you who don't know, is like, let's say you only eat one meal a day, one big meal a day, and that's it. I know to some people that's like, what? I used to tell that to other people, no, you're crazy. I would never do that. Hey, if there's good benefits that will benefit you overall, mentally, physically, socially, why not? That's what I'm trying to convince you. It looks a little. And sometimes you'll be going through these moments where you're like, okay, I'm not getting anything, but you gotta keep finding, gotta keep looking. Look, check this one out. Intermittent fasting for prevention of cardiovascular disease. Now let me tell you about another reason why you should do intermittent fasting. Studies have shown that it can help in the prevention of cardiovascular disease. Just improvising. Cardiovascular disease. Okay. When you have like peer review, like experimental information like this, if you go to the background of the abstract, you get an overview of the study, and then if you go right away to main results discussion, it tells you what they found. So that way you don't have to go through reading, because some of it is maybe a little bit like technical. It may sound like it's full of jargon, and sometimes it is. But if you go to the main results, like what did this study find? What did they conclude? For example, he just read a quick read off of this. Our search yielded something that I could use to convince you. You'll be doing this. Sometimes you got to go into the details. You can't be general all the time. Body weight was reduced with, let's see, what else? Something, boy. Changes in body weight and glucose were not deemed to, well, for this particular study, changes in body weight and glucose were not deemed to be clinically significant. So maybe somebody else might come and be like, no, it may not be that good. It may not, somebody will try to counter argue that. Maybe we could try another one. But I'm sure you guys can kind of see, sometimes you have to do this. This is what I've done. This is the method that I used a lot when I was writing my papers. Look at this one, the effects of intermittent fasting on brain and cognitive function. How can I use this to try to persuade you to fast twice a week? Once again, the abstract gives you the overall view of everything. Future research, let's see if they tell us anything. Findings from animal studies show mechanisms by which Parkinson's disease, ischemic stroke, autism spectrum disorder, and mood and anxiety disorders could benefit from if intermittent fasting. Okay, I could probably use this one. Maybe paraphrase something from here. Another study found that there may be significant improvement in mental clarity done at the University of Chicago. That's one way. But yeah, for sure, argumentative essays are you're going to have to do your work first, gather information. What position are you going to take? And if you need to take a day or 2 or 3 days just reading articles and books and hearing opinions and interviews, that's what you got to do. Yeah, lay the groundwork for when you start writing your actual paper. Okay. Let's go to another type of prompt that is commonly found. The narrative one. The narrative one's kind of like a little bit more lightweight, a little bit more, I don't want to say freestyle, but it kind of gives you a little bit more freedom because it could be anecdotal, your personal experience, things that you've witnessed, and it's usually, insightful. You can be creative. You could fiction, suspense, drama. And then one of my favorites tell us about one of your most embarrassing experiences. I'm sure everybody has one. And so these are kind of easier to write because it kind of just flows from you. And then, you could start this one off like, maybe you could start this one off like, you have a blank page, right? You don't know where to start. Just free write it. Let me tell you about my most embarrassing experience. And you could start off with this one time, there was a piece of metal dangling from the bottom of my car. So I'm not worried about spelling right now. And then, I thought that it was all good, that it didn't have, I was thinking that I was good and, no big deal. Nobody will notice. And then suddenly one day when I went to go pick up my son from school, it started scraping on the bottom of the floor and everybody, you see how it just comes out naturally? It's like chronological. Suddenly everyone started hearing a noisy car, like, scraping. I don't know if I'm sure you've heard cars that scrape, like the metal scraping on the floor and it sounds annoying. And then, the next thing you know, a police officer tells me to pull over right in front of all of the students and staff. And then I have to get out of my car, look under the hood, and let's see, let me pick on somebody. Lillian, are you there?
Yes, but I have to leave. I have a class at 2:10.
Okay.
But if you have any question, I will be happy to assist. I can describe when I saw the bear, like a wild bear in Wyoming. That is interesting, but I was not afraid. That is a shocking thing, but okay, I can say it.
Okay, well, can you tell us about is that an embarrassing one?
Oh, the embarrassing one? Oh boy.
Moment, yeah. we're just
Oh
rewriting.
yeah, I was doing like what we were doing on a presentation for the school, and I was the one that is supposed to be the presenter. I was saying what was going on with the subject that we are studying, and we made a theater that each opposite sides was going to give a pie on the face of each one if the mistake was done happened. So, and then that was our presentation. So it was funny, everybody was laughing, and it was great. Everybody was understanding. The professor really loves everything. And by surprise, a person from my own team came and gave the pie on my face.
Oh,
That
I got you.
was, oh my goodness, so embarrassed. First, I didn't know why they are giving this. And second, was all the floor was dirty with chantilly that I used the whipped cream. I slide and I fall at the middle of the class, and I was using a skirt. So it was really bad and embarrassed moment.
Yeah, but you see how that comes out, that how you could just tell that, and it just the words just flow out of you. You don't even have to
Yes.
think about it. It's second nature. That
Yep.
you
And I
know,
can continue.
yeah, no, keep on. You're so embarrassed, and what happened?
And everybody even laughed even more. So I didn't know what to think or how to react, if I was hurt, if I was embarrassed, or if I was mad to my team because that was not on the script for our presentation. So it was way over embarrassing moment for me.
Yeah, for sure that would have been embarrassing because it looks funny when you have all that on your face. Your eyes look funny. Yeah, no, and usually narrative essays are like I said, they're the easiest to write because it's just going to flow out of you because, or maybe another one is tell us about that one time that you were, tell us about that one time that you were in love. You know?
Oh
That would be
boy.
so easy. That one, like everybody could write that quickly. Like
Yes.
I'm sure that essay you could submit that same day. You know?
Yeah. The thing is, like, I don't know. I would like to know how is the structure of the essay, because I
Mhm.
don't know here because I didn't study here. So, can you tell me about, like, is a dissertation, is like a story? What is an essay exactly?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's different types. This one in particular, it would be a narrative essay where you're just kind of like telling a story, or you're just talking about
Uh-huh.
an experience you had. You
Uh-huh.
may talk about a funny moment that you had, or a very sad, traumatic experience that you had. It's just it doesn't require you to do any it doesn't require any scientific evidence or data or statistics. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
require. It's just everything that you experience. So it's easy to write in that sense. But
Yeah.
I know you were talking about a dissertation. That would be more advanced, I think, for PhD students, which is like a type of argumentative essay, if I'm not mistaken. But you're arguing for something. You're taking a position and then you're going to defend it. Specifically with a dissertation, you have to defend in front of other PhDs or other doctors. So that one, and I know Dr. Madison has some experience with this. Sometimes that essay has to be like 80 pages, 80-page
Yeah.
essay.
I'll
Yeah.
jump
So,
in, and it's you find a topic, and you, back to the point of defending it, you're looking for scholarly research that has been previously written that supports your claim. So for instance, when I was getting my doctorate degree, my topic focused on transfer student success, and if statewide articulation agreements was helping students with their transfer from community college to university. In the state of Florida, we have all of these different mechanisms to help students transfer. We have a statewide articulation agreement. We have a 2+2 program where students are automatically accepted from a public community college to a public university, but that doesn't exist across the country, because we know that education is a state's issue, right? So in states like New York and states like Pennsylvania, they don't necessarily have this statewide support. So I had to do my research and look at transfer student outcomes. Are they graduating within 4 to 6 years in these states with these agreements versus states without? And my dissertation was like 137 pages, and that included references, that included, my appendices with charts. But to Sam's point, a narrative, you don't have to find other research. It is your story. You're talking about something that happened to you, and you can approach it from these different angles, as he has on the screen. You can make it a funny story. You can be creative. You can make it drama. We just had a ghostwriting contest where students made up these stories, about spooky haunted towns and different ghost stories. So it's all up to you of how you want to approach in telling your story, your personal experience here. And I'll give it back to you, Sam.
Yeah, hopefully, sorry, what was your name again? The previous student?
Lillian?
Okay, yeah, hopefully that was...
Because like in Brazil, dissertation is like a composition. And I was doing my master degree in marketing too, but was in Portugal, and we have is a dissertation, but we can use the same word for both models, but it's a different protocols. And, but English is my second language, and I have a difficult sometimes where I put comma or like 2 points, or even the structure of the sentence, because when you give adjective to the name, here you put the opposite side. So, and it's different. So I am trying to learn how to switch my brain to do well.
No, and obviously the more you write and the more you put in those experiences and going through the motions and going through the, breaking your head and feeling like you're not going to submit it on time. You got to go through all those experiences, and with each essay, you become a better writer. You don't realize it, but as time progresses, your writing gets better. Sometimes your thinking, how you communicate, gets better, more clear, more direct, instead of rambling on, But if you don't mind, let me just ask: does any of the students have any questions or any concerns that you would like to address? Anything that maybe want to touch upon? Maybe somebody wants to share what types of essays they have the most trouble with.
Yes, I have a question for the evidence. You go on Google Scholar and Miami-Dade. Is there any other ways to go find evidence?
Yeah, there's a lot. There's multiple. I use Google Scholar a lot. That's my personal one. But it depends on where you go, or you could even, sometimes you could use just regular search engines, but you just got to be aware, like, can you see that?
Yes, I can.
Sometimes you just gotta, if you're gonna go this route, just be aware of where you're getting information from. Is it an organization? Is it the American Medical, for example? If you're gonna American Medical Society, you gotta evaluate the source too, because you don't want to use evidence that might be a little bit like, or if the organization looks kind of cryptic, like, oh, I don't know, if they don't have an address, if they don't have a main phone number, you may want to not use. It all depends on, where are you getting your information from? Is it the main source? Like, let's say I'm going to use information from, sometimes you could just go to the source. So let's say I'm doing one on careers and jobs. I'll go right to the U.S. Department of Labor. And go right to the source, and use from here. That way nobody can argue, oh, where did you get that from? No, that's not true. Well, according to the Department of Labor and Statistics, they state that, It all depends on what type of like what you're arguing for and the evidence that you're using. But yeah, there's others. You could use there's JSTOR. These are some of the ones that I use. JSTOR. I mean, there's other search engines, or you could even look up academic search engines, or even our own website, even the Miami-Dade one.
I'm sorry, Professor, I have to go to the other class.
No, it's fine. Well, thank you for coming. Hopefully you learned something and pick something out that helps.
Oh, of course, I want to do more often. The next one, please invite me again.
Yeah, we'll be putting out announcements, and thank you for coming.
Thank you. Bye.
Imani, was that you?
That was me. Yes, hi.
Yeah. Sometimes, just look up what, you could use PubMed. What's your major?
Oh, my major is in art, but I'm taking an English class right now.
Okay. Do you have an assignment or something? Like, what is it that?
No, I'm just here just to learn a little bit more information.
Yeah. The most important thing to do, when you're doing a research paper, that you got to present, experiments, peer-reviewed evidence, facts, statistics. You want to keep a list of your sources. Save the URLs or save it on your favorites. You find a really good article, save it in your favorites so that you can always go back to it.
All right.
What you don't want to do is you present a lot of information. It's a great written essay, but there's no references. Because then the professor would be like, okay, where did you get that from? Where did you get this from? And how do I know that this is not true? So, keep that in mind. Iris? Hello, Iris.
Let me ask you a question, sir. How are you?
Hello. Yeah. Okay.
Hello.
Give me.
Okay. No, my question, I just want to know when an essay is a good essay, because sometimes when you write something or a research paper, but the grammar is always okay, but the professor always have something to say. The professor always say, "Oh no, the essay is not good." But I don't know what I have to do. I just want to make sure what I need to put an essay to have a good essay.
Yeah.
Because
Iris, I'll get to you right now, Iris. Sorry about that. Yeah, usually with essays like that, like let's say what type of essay? Argumentative, persuasive?
Oh, me? Imani?
Yeah, Darlene. Who was that Darlene? Sorry, I got confused. Darlene, did you just ask me that?
Darlene,
No,
Darlene. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, Darlene,
It's Darlene.
it all depends. Yeah, it all depends on what type of essay it is. I know, like I said, I spend a little bit more time on the argumentative because that's the one that students usually struggle with. Maybe did you have a strong thesis? Was your thesis well defined? Did you provide actual evidence from experiments, from surveys, statistics? It all depends. Maybe you didn't.
But I just want to make sure something very strong. If they don't have something very strong, I can add anything, because he always say, "Oh, your grammar is good." A good essay is not only the grammar, everything. The grammar is good, but you need to add some more. And sometimes too, and I'm asking him why you cannot tell us what we have to put more in it. He said, "No, we're not the kids anymore. We know how to add in it to make it more strong." But when he asks for detail, but I don't know, he can say the story don't make sense. They don't look like it's a real story. I don't know. But we don't need a real story. We need something to write properly. That's why I don't know if you hear me very well, because I am in
can hear you. I can hear you. Yeah, you really with that in your case, okay. I mean, it depends on what the feedback is of the professor. But there's going to be, obviously there's always going to be something. Somebody can always find something off with your paper. I don't think there's ever a perfect paper, because somebody could come. We all have different points of views and opinions, but I would take that as a case by case. Usually when either there wasn't a lot of supporting evidence or details, or the thesis wasn't strong, or maybe it was too general and you were just superficial and you didn't go in depth into the topic. So I mean that's the best I can explain right now based on what you told me. but usually the professor should be able to give you, direct feedback, like try this or try adding this or try this method. So hopefully, that was helpful. Iris, sorry.
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Well,
Hello.
I'm having right now on our argumentative essay for my English composition class. The lectures are really hard to understand. They are kind of complicated. We are seeing right now Walden, I don't know, the Toros or something like that. And we need to contrast with the death of the moth. My problem is in the prompt, there are too many questions, and I don't know how to, how to get to those questions. If I need to put all the answers in the introduction, or you have to be in the body paragraph. I'm kind of struggling with that part. It's
So
about
like
death and life. So it's a theme by itself. So I'm struggling with that.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, do they give you like questions to answer? Like question 1, answer this, question 2, question 3.
Let me read you. It says, what was Henry David Thoreau's response life apparent meaningless? Compare one with the other one, and with the death of the moth, if I'm agree, if how contrast something like that, the death with the life. And there's too many questions in the prompt that I don't know if I have to answer in the introduction or in the essay, in the body paragraph. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I've seen some of those essays where like they give you a list of questions and then the professor's like answer it in essay format. So let's say like you have 5 questions, each question would be a paragraph for me. I would divide them into, okay, the first question is this, and then I'll start answering that question and only focus on that one. And then that would be your body paragraph. So you have 5 questions, right? Let's just say 5 questions, comparing, contrasting, etc. I would have 5 mini paragraphs, because you also don't want to be, you don't want to be bringing up questions from question number two into question number 1, and you don't want to be, cross-pollinating material where, leave that for question 3, leave this for question 2. It depends on your situation too. But you were saying this was an argumentative essay?
Yes.
Yeah. Usually, and of course, read the stories, read any articles that you have to do. Even though you have to read it 3 or 4 times or 5, read it as many times as you have to until you really grasp and understand the content. Because it's very hard sometimes to write about something that you're still not sure of. So that's why, the first few days, if you have to read a text or you got to read a story, read it multiple times. And as you're reading, take notes. And sometimes, what helps too? Have the questions next to you. And as you're reading, highlight, oh, this can help me for question 1. This part can help me for question 2. So it is, you also have to be active sometimes, have your notes here, have them some, you can say, have them side by side, have your questions here and your text here and you're reading. Highlight, mark.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm trying to share the prompts to you. I
don't know how that would work, but let me see. Let me see if anybody else has any questions, and if not, then we could just help you. Okay, we can look at that real quick. Anybody else have any general questions about prompts or types of prompts?
I see that you shared it by mistake directly to me instead of the whole group, but we are wrapping up. But I do recommend, if you want to meet with Sam, I'm not sure which campus you're located on, but we do have virtual appointments where you can meet with him remotely, because Sam is located at the Homestead campus and maybe a little far for you if you're not at Homestead, but he can certainly meet with you virtually to help you with this particular assignment.
Okay.
Yeah, we could do that. It'll be more one-on-one, and then, we'll get you started. Do an out, maybe with an outline and a rough draft. It's no big.
I'm sending the link directly to you, and I also have it in
Hey,
the
book an
chat.
appointment. Book an appointment, and we'll tackle it together. It's no big deal. We're here for you. So don't
Okay.
feel overwhelmed. I guess I
Okay.
would tell you that to the students too. Whenever you feel overwhelmed and like you don't know what to do anymore,
Yes, and I
first-
don't know how to start, and that's the problem. If you don't
Sometimes,
start,
yeah.
you're not gonna.
Yeah, you got to start. Think of it like a movie. You know how movies, you got to start somewhere. You're not, every movie has to start somewhere. Start somewhere. That's the same thing with a paragraph. With writing an essay, you got to start somewhere. Even if you got to change it later on, that's fine. But start putting words on paper. Because once you start flowing, you'll see like ideas will start coming out of you. It's just a matter of starting.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, so do an appointment, and for sure I can help you with that. And I think that's the end. That's the end, right, Dr. Madison? We're out of time.
Yeah, that's the end. This has been a wonderful session. Thank you, Samuel. If you want to give him thanks in the chat or verbally give thanks and turn off your microphones. I do want to give one more reminder to drop your MDC email address in the chat so that we can give you credit for attending today's session. That is very important. So we'll keep it open a little longer for everyone to give us their MDC ID or MDC email address. I'm sorry. And as we mentioned, we offer tutoring on all 8 campuses. So whichever campus is your home-based campus, we have writing tutors available to you. If you have a specific tutor that you want to work with, as I mentioned, and they're a little far away from you, you can meet with them virtually. Like Sam, as I mentioned, is here at the Homestead campus. But if you like his style and you think that what he's offering is very helpful and you can connect with that, you can meet with Sam, even though you may be at the North Campus, for example. But definitely take advantage of these opportunities. We offer Writing Wednesday every Wednesday, fall, spring, 12 p.m. and 6 p.m. And I will add the link to our Skill Shops event calendar in the chat one more time. But come every Wednesday, and maybe if you have recommendations of different topics that you would like to see, let us know. We want to make sure that we're offering content that is related to what you're seeing in your classes, things that are going to be helpful for you. But as we mentioned, we're here. You're not here alone. You don't have to come to us with a written paper. So even if you're at the point where someone just mentioned, like, I don't know where to start, I just want to brainstorm, they can come and brainstorm. Well, you can come to us and we can help you brainstorm. So take advantage of this wonderful opportunity while you're enrolled in all of your classes that require writing, especially ENC 1101, 1102. Those are your core English courses that mostly all of our students have to take. But any writing assignment where you need assistance with writing, take advantage. They are here to help you with that. Sam, I don't know if you want to add any few words before we close out.
Yeah, no. Just like I always said, writing a good quality essay is going to take time and it's going to cost you. It's not going to just, unless you're like an amazing writer and it could just come to you magically. It's going to take time. It's going to take preparation. You got to execute, and just take it head on. Don't be afraid of it. I think we've all been there. But if you come up with it with a positive attitude, and I'm gonna do this essay, and positive affirmations, you can get it done. And just good luck. And hopefully, everybody took something away today, something that's useful to help you in your writing courses. Yeah, that would be it.
Perfect. Thank you all. We hope you have an amazing day. We hope to see you at our future Writing Wednesdays.